yo, we don't want more of that. We don't want another Iraq. We don't want another situation where as soon as you change a regime, you're responsible for everything that happens after that. That's the way it's looked at. If you kill the president, supreme leader, prince, king, whatever, whoever runs the country, the people are like, yo, you got to help us rebuild. The aftermath is they don't have a leader. And then you also have a problem with a vacuum that typically happens when you kill a leader of a country. You have a vacuum. So you typically have factions who have different points of view. So you may have clans, tribes, different people, different political parties, and sometimes it ends up in a lot of violence before you can stabilize things. So this is a big problem with regime change, and we saw that in Iraq. Like I said, we saw that in Libya, right? We saw that in Libya, getting rid of Gaddafi. That was a big deal, and people in the country said they liked it, but at the same time, people hated it because the country went into a lot of chaos. So let's play the exiled prince, Reza Pahlavi. He was the exiled crown prince. His father was the last Shah of Iran. Let's play some of what he had to say.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tells ABC News targeting the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, would end the fight between the two countries, not escalate it. Netanyahu's comments come as Iran's exiled crown prince says it's time for the Iranian military and security forces to abandon the Islamic Republic. Reza Pahlavi's grandfather was the last Shah of Iran before the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The exiled crown prince of Iran and advocate for secular democratic Iran, Reza Pahlavi, joins me now for more. Sir, thank you for coming on. You say now is the time for the Iranian people to come together and reclaim Iran by getting rid of the Ayatollah. Why do you think that? And could the Iranian people do this without an international effort?
Well, first of all, this is not a new fight for us. It's been going on for decades, and particularly in the latter years, we've seen how many times the Iranians have gathered together in protest and defiance of the regime, knowing full well that as long as this regime is in place, there's no hope for a better future for all of us as Iranians. Now the opportunity has been provided in the sense that when you're fighting an extremely brutal and repressive regime, when it's been now declawed and we are sensing almost a state of collapse by the regime, by people beginning to defect, by relatives of the regime taking flight, by the leader himself hiding in an underground tunnel, I think that this is an opportunity that we have never had this far in the past 4 decades. And this is the best opportunity for us to finally overcome this regime and get rid of it. So I think my fellow compatriots are energized in the fact that finally they can see light at the end of the tunnel, and all the martyrs and all the people we have lost in our struggle against this regime will not have died in vain. This is our moment in history to change not only the course of things in our own country, but something that I believe would also be to the best interest of the free world.
Iran is a little different. They have a supreme leader. So they do have a president, but the president is second in command. The ultimate authority goes to the supreme leader. So that's how it works there. And right now, this is the guy that Trump talks about possibly killing. And I really think that it's going to be a bad idea to assassinate that supreme leader, only because I think the aftermath will be very dangerous for the U.S. Terrorism, it's a difficult thing. So I'm not here to argue whether Iran sponsors terrorism or not. Terrorism is a very deep conversation in what you define as terrorism, right? So I'm not going to sit here and argue that. But I do know when you're dealing with countries in the Middle East, right, the aftermath of war and assassinating leaders and regime change often causes new terrorism. That's one of my concerns with the United States, is that we really don't need that right now. I think Trump marketed himself as being someone who had a lot of diplomacy, knew how to get people to do what they needed to do without bombs, without threat. And the way he's poised himself against the supreme leader, I think has gotten to a point now. I don't think America can really, because he's basically saying that unless the supreme leader comes and says, listen, I'm going to totally surrender and do whatever you want, we're going to bomb you. They're not going to do that. I don't see the Iranian leadership doing that. It makes, even if they know they're going to get slaughtered, I think that they're the same way, they're poised the same way Saddam Hussein was. Saddam Hussein I mean, he believed that, you know what, who cares if you guys come over here, US, we're not surrendering. And they got, obviously Iraq got destroyed. But it's also a pride thing when you're dealing with these leaders, because they're going to be prideful and say, to the last drop of blood, we're going to fight. But at the same time, the people who live there don't want that. The average everyday Iranian does not want war, and they don't want to be fleeing the capital and, going through regime change and all this stuff if it's going to cost a lot of death. Will it make Israel safer? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the world is so complicated, right? Because it's almost like gang violence when if we can compare it to like street violence. Gangs, it's like an ongoing killing, right? So it's like one gang, you kill another, they're gonna come back and kill you. You're gonna go kill them, they come kill you. So it's not always about who has the most power. You know, it seems like that, but it doesn't really end the conflict. That's the problem, and that's what when you go back again to the Iraq war, it's like, what would have happened if Saddam Hussein was still around? I wasn't a fan of Saddam Hussein. I don't think he treated his people well, and I think it was well documented how bad of a leader he was. But what was the aftermath for the United States? The money and lives that it cost to remove Saddam Hussein. What would have happened if he still was in power? Because I don't think he was a fan of personally get involved in terrorism. I don't think he had weapons of mass destruction. I think he liked running things over in Iraq, and I think he wanted more control over oil, that's for sure, right? And I think he wanted more and more control over his people, that's for sure, right? But was he an existential threat to the United States? No, right? And I think it cost us more removing him than it would have cost to just leave him there. So with Iran, I think there's enough time to keep discussing with them. But I think, again, let's be honest, Israel and Iran have a different beef that's not our beef, right? And I think that, Israel wants the US to step up and get involved in this, mainly because that's their beef. And it is what it is. That's their beef. But is it for the United States? Is it something that we need as U.S. citizens? And will Trump's presidency survive if we get involved deeply like that? So we shall see.